decisions, we'll do that, okay?
Okay. Thumbs up. Okay, great. Good evening. I would like to call the meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for Thursday, March 16th to order. Excuse me. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
We are going to be swearing in Mr. Erland and Mr. Hara first. So, Mr. Erland, I'll invite you down. All right, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States,
of the United States,
the Constitution of this state,
the Constitution of this state,
the Charter of the City of Glosson,
the Charter of the City of Clawson,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
of the Office of Zoning Board of Appeals
of the Office of Zoning Board of Appeals
in and for the City of Glosson,
and and for the City of Clawson,
County of Oakland,
County of Oakland,
and State of Michigan,
State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of this state,
the Constitution of this state,
the Charter of the City of Glosson,
the Charter of the City of Clawson,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties of the Office of Zoning Board of Appeals,
and I will faithfully execute the duties of the office
of
of
Zoning,
the
Zoning Board of Appeals,
Zoning Board of Appeals, thank
in and for the City of Glosson,
in and for the City of Clawson,
County of Oakland,
County of Oakland,
and State of Michigan,
and State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the very best of my ability. Thank you. Welcome to the board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome to the board, members.
Thank you.
Now, Nicholas, can we call the roll?
Yes, we have Mr. Hara,
Here.
Mr. Erland,
Here.
Mr. Hildebrandt, Ms. Perkins,
Here.
Ms. Cindy Smith,
Here.
Ms. Diane Smith. All right, thank you.
Okay, great. Within our package, we were provided the meeting minutes from our meeting on February 16th. Has everybody had a chance to look those over? And would you, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes?
Madam Chair,
Excuse me, I think because both those members weren't sitting on the board at that time, we are gonna have to wait for the next meeting.
Okay, so
So
we'll table
Make
item
a-
number 4.
I would make a motion to postpone the approval of the minutes.
Madam,
I'd recommend that motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we postpone the approval of the meeting minutes from Thursday, February 16th, 2023, until our next meeting.
I have a proposal and a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
Great. We will move the approval to the regular meetings from February 16th to our next scheduled meeting. And this is due to the new members here sitting today that you just witnessed getting signed in.
Madam Vice Chair,
Yeah.
I do need to call the roll too.
Okay, let's call the roll to postpone the motion.
Okay.
I think.
Oh, I apologize. Can I call the roll?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Hara,
Sorry, I'm going to abstain because I wasn't here for that last
this is to postpone voting on
Oh,
the
okay,
minutes.
yeah, yes.
Okay. Mr. Erland,
Yes.
Ms. Perkins.
Yes.
Ms. Cindy Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Apologies.
No worries.
Okay, moving on. The item Next will be a public hearing on request for variance from section 4.2A prohibiting a heavy auto repair within 200 feet residential district, and from sections 36.9 and 36.15 2B of the sign ordinance to permit a taller sign with no monument base at 650 North Rochester Road. Do we have the applicant to speak to this matter?
Yes.
When you step up to the microphone, please sure to state your name and your address for the record, please.
We're gonna pass out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on board.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
My name is Mark Ham, and my address is 31251 Heath Court, Beverly Hills, Michigan. And we are here to discuss the ordinances here. I do want to mention that we've decided to go with a wall sign instead of a monument sign.
Okay.
So that's in the package here. I'm a sign guy myself. That's what I do for a living, so. And it just works out better to our advantage from a visibility standpoint to have it on the building. So where do we go from here?
I believe, Andy, do you want to just give a brief overview of the proposed variance?
Yeah, I can give an overview too. So with the variance from the 200-foot residential rule, that's really that was the first variance on the agenda. The zoning standard is that an auto garage cannot be within 200 feet of a residentially zoned district, or commercially zoned district, if you want to be specific about the law. There's not a lot of property that qualifies for such in the city. So the applicant is just simply looking to reuse the building as it was used, I believe, in the past. I believe there was once an auto garage, but because of time frame constraints, it kind of lapsed in terms of being able to reuse it by right. So that's why the applicant is before the board today, is just to simply kind of have that use reset. And specifically, the building looks to be about 8 feet from the residentially zoned properties. But again, that's how the building sits. The applicant is not looking to try to move the building or do any kind of very substantial work that would, be a big, have a big impact on the site as a whole. So it looks like pertaining to the sign, I believe that's kind of new knowledge. That's new knowledge to me, at least, that the applicant is withdrawing the monument sign variance, it sounds like. Is that correct?
Yeah, we
Okay.
looked at it in a previous Zoom meeting.
Okay.
I asked the question because I am a sign guy.
Yeah.
What does this mean? Because I've worked with many municipalities when it comes to this. And, I was kind of told that we weren't going to be able to bring it up another 4 feet, which I understand ordinances change.
Yep.
But with the shop next door and cars all the way out to the road, it's always going to block the view of a lower sign.
Got it.
And it just made sense to put it on the building.
Yep.
And I think it enhances the building, as you can see from renderings and
Okay.
that type of thing.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, I believe, because the applicant is stating on the record that he wants to withdraw the variance, and I don't think you need to vote on that. I believe we can.
So the request for initial variances, there was 3. There was one for
Yep.
the use, then there was 2 for the signage.
Yep.
So you're only requesting the use variance now and
Correct.
requesting withdrawal of the signage.
And to be clear, because a use variance is a technical term, this is not actually a use variance. It's a variance
For the
from
use.
yeah. Essentially, it's a variance for the use. It's a variance from the 200-foot rule for the use as an auto garage. just because a use variance is a totally separate thing. I didn't want to get those words mixed up. So I don't believe a motion needs to be made to deny or approve the sign variance now because the applicant is stating on the record that it's withdrawn. How do you feel about that, Nick?
Yeah, the only variance that you guys would be considering tonight is the one to use the current site as an automobile garage.
And I'm definitely here to answer any questions. I want to point everybody to the standards on the third page of the staff report. The Zoning Board of Appeals needs to determine that all of the standards listed here are true in order to grant a variance. And if you wish, just as a reminder, if you wish to deny any variance, you need to cite which standard it does not meet and why. So those are your requirements when you make your motions.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
So the monument sign will come down,
We're gonna remove the monument sign.
and is there any desire to have another sign in the ground that's lower?
Well, the way I initially read the code, research that we did, I thought it could only be one or the other, 32 square feet, on the ground, and 50 square feet, which we're just under on the building.
I was gonna ask.
But then I think Nick or somebody mentioned to me that I think you can have two, but I don't think it's a small front yard, and it is blocked for the north moving traffic, so that will never, so I just think it makes sense to what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Have any of the neighbors spoken up about moving another auto body or an auto body place in there? The only reason why I ask is because when it's a tire place, it's much different than auto body. I used to work above an auto body shop, and it's much smellier and much louder in general. That being said, I don't know if anybody said anything.
No,
Okay.
our closest neighbors is the print shop next door. Gills doesn't want us there. No, I'm kidding. We're friendly neighbors, and the print shop next door has no issues with it. We've talked with them at length.
Okay.
And in fact, in refurbing the parking lot, they have some areas that could be fixed too, so like had our contractor that's quoting on it, do some areas for them too.
Yeah, I do see that you have a lot of things you're going to do, including the landscaping, which is a hot mess, so I'm super happy to see that. And I'm glad you're deciding to put the sign on the building, because that's actually in line with the rest of the businesses along that area. And
It's
those
professional.
cars do block that. I've
Yeah.
researched it, so. I don't really have any other questions.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak or have questions on this topic? Do you guys have any questions down here?
You should make sure to formally say we will close the public hearing, assuming.
Can you also turn your mic on him? I apologize.
Hello? Okay. So we've opened the public meeting for the public hearing, and nobody here is wanting to discuss this topic, so we will close the public hearing on the matter. And if nobody has any more questions for the applicant or for our assistants here, I'd entertain a motion.
I do have one more question,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Sure.
So when we make this motion, it's on the application as read, or do we modify this?
So my recommendation is you use the wordage or the wording in the staff report where we say summary of variance sought. So you would say motion to blank the variance from zoning ordinance section 4.42A to allow for blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But because it sounds like the applicant has made it clear on the record that he is withdrawing the two sign variances, I do not believe there needs to be a motion on that. I believe that the applicant's statements prevail in that circumstance.
Yeah, I'm just trying to avoid, somebody reading the meeting minutes and looking at this packet and saying, that's what they approved. They approved it, the whole lot of it.
Well, yeah, and that's the benefit of really calling out in the motion what variance you are approving. You're approving it, the variance from the standard 4.42A.
Can we say in that motion that we are not approving the variance for the sign maximum?
As long as you're publicly stating that the only variance you're approving is for the use, and you don't even recognize the signs, that's all that'll be sufficient.
Okay. And just for discussion on our part before the motion, Madam
Sure.
Chair, the specific variances that we are, if we did approve it, which one of these are we suggesting is the exceptional cause?
Are you looking at page 5 where it says summary and rationale,
Yeah, well,
where there's 3 bullet points?
no, I'm looking at, for the variance one, we're the distance from the residential, which is the key thing they need. So which hardship is being specifically cited?
Which hardship is, I'm sorry?
Which criteria would a variance be approved based on?
Go ahead.
So if I may, just to clarify, you need to make sure, so you need to, in your findings, you say, I make a motion to approve. You need to make sure that all those standards are met. So you would just read that, you would say, in our findings, we find that standard 1, standard 2, standard 3, read them out, preferably. And those are your findings to support your motion. There always needs to be findings to support a motion, whatever the motion is.
And I do want to mention that, the lawns, the backyards of the residential on the east and north side of the building, they're all really deep lots. So it's not like the house is right up against our fence or border wall.
And there's kind of a lot of brush on the back side of that property too that sort of accumulated.
There's a lot of stuff there. And anybody can come through and take a before and after if you want, but it will be beautiful when we're done. The bones are good, but, it needs work, there's no question.
For sure. On the interior side, you're going to keep that, I feel like we've closed public comments. I shouldn't really be talking.
No, you
No,
can.
please.
Public comment, you can
Please do.
discuss throughout the board, and then you can also, if the chair permits, you can have a back and forth with the applicant as well.
Sure.
Yes, absolutely. Discussion's great.
Okay.
Please do.
So the interior office, this property came up before planning before
Yeah.
for a different one, and there was a very different use for what it was
Yeah, I
originally
heard.
engineered. So this is much more in line, I think, with kind of what makes sense and what is certainly the cheapest way to bring that back to life and contributing to the community. So there's a little bit of an office section up front. You're probably going to keep that more or less the same.
We're keeping everything the same.
Yeah.
We're beautifying everything, and
Yeah.
it's, the bones are good on the building, but that's about it. I mean, we've got a lot of work, and it's a big investment, but it's a great area. We want to be good stewards of the community and look forward to putting this together.
Do you have a time frame?
What we'd like and what is realistic, yeah, we would, upon approval, our goal is around 4 months, but depending on the trades and how that goes, we're quickly, it's been nice, we're doing our due diligence now. We signed the PA a couple weeks ago, but, they were gracious enough to give us some keys and let us walk some people through early, and so we're pretty far down that path now, so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What you were looking for.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, I think it looks fabulous. Do you have any other
We're good.
questions? Okay.
If,
I will-
just as a reminder too, because the zoning ordinance does say you need the concurring vote of four votes to pass any action, so just wanted to remind you that.
Oh, yes. So
Yep.
we would all have to approve for the motion to pass.
Okay,
Or you can choose to postpone the matter like we did with our approval of the minutes for additional members to arrive. And that would be next month.
the sooner the better is
Okay.
the way we look at it.
Okay, so again, I would entertain a motion on this variance.
You were interested, Matt, or Nate, you go ahead.
I'm not good at motions. But
Okay.
I'll take a s-
We'll work through it together.
So I'm just going to give it a college try at
There
this.
you go.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the variance requested for the, per section 734-715.d of the zoning ordinance. Is that right?
Excuse me,
No.
you might be looking at the
It's
different.
4.42.
4.42.
Where did it go? I'm going to take a
To start
mulligan on
over
that.
might be
Yes.
best. Yep.
Told you I was going to struggle with this. Yeah, so I make a motion to approve the variance from section 4.42.a to allow for an automotive repair garage within 200 feet of a residentially zoned district. And I would cite the practical difficulties are exceptional and peculiar to the property of the person requesting the variance and results from conditions which do not generally exist throughout the city.
You need to find that all standards are met.
Furthermore, the practical difficulties which will result from a failure to grant the variance include substantially more than mere inconvenience or inability to attain a higher financial return. Allowing the non-use and dimensional variance will result in a substantial justice being done, considering the public benefits intended to be secured by this article, the individual hardships that will be suffered by a failure of the board to grant a variance, and the rights of others whose property would be affected by the allowance of the variance. The variance did not arise from the actions of the applicant or previous landowner. And finally, the requested variance is not based solely on financial need or circumstance.
I second.
Okay, and do we also just want to add that the second and third variances requested have been withdrawn from the applicant, just so it's clear and concise in there?
Yeah, we can do that if that's what the board pleases. so.
Okay,
Yes.
so we have a motion, do we have support?
I'll second as amended.
Okay. And roll call?
Miss Cindy Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Harrow,
Yes.
Mr. Erland,
Yes.
Ms. Perkins.
Yes.
Your motion has passed. Congratulations. And we look forward to the new building.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming to
Thank you
Clausen.
very much.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome to Clausen.
Yes.
Never a customer, but
I was gonna say the same thing.
there just in case.
Thank you. All right, well, the next item up for agenda is a public hearing on a request for a variance from section 3.1B4 to permit a smaller than required setback at 248 Red Ruth Avenue. Would our planner like to discuss this topic first?
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
I'm definitely able to discuss. Kind of not necessarily exactly similar as last meeting, but kind of similar. There's another addition on a single-family home that wishes to encroach into the required setback distance. So in this case, it's it looks like it's a beautiful mid-century modern home that they're looking to add to the rear of the property, the rear of the house. And in doing so, they're encroaching into the required 5-foot side yard to 4 foot 4 inches. So technically 8 inches inside of that requirement. To my knowledge, it's just a single story addition. It's about 400 or so square feet. It does look like it complies with the other typical setback and lot coverage dimensional stuff. So that's good. The one interesting aspect that we kind of uncovered, just understanding, the mid-century modern architecture, a lot of times there's larger eaves that overhang a bit more. In this case, I wanted to just point out that, the applicant should confirm the eave dimensions, because technically by the ordinance, the eave should not extend more than 8 2/3 inches from that 4 4 inch wall edge, if that makes sense. So if you're, the eave or the overhang, for lack of a better term, I call it an overhang because I'm not as architecturally technical as some, but same thing. That cannot extend more than 8 2/3 inches from that sidewall, if that sidewall is located at 4 4 inches. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that, because obviously there's some concerns with having eaves close to property lines. We want to just make sure water is taken care of responsibly and has, responsible drainage if there weren't gutters or if there weren't other safeguards in place to take care of water. So that was my biggest kind of, not a red flag at all, but just a point that you should be aware of, is just the eave dimension.
Is
So-
the current eve outside of the ordinance now?
I think
it's non-conforming, correct?
It does look like it's not.
So as long as they keep it even, so to speak,
So,
if they're building all the way, say, straight back, correct?
yeah,
And they keep it even, then it would still be,
that's a good point. The way
and I can't tell
the,
from this,
the way the Clausen ordinance is it's a non-conforming characteristic can remain, but it can't intensify or it
Oh,
can't
right,
increase.
okay.
So I think by that interpretation, you are correct, is that as long as the eave is not extending past that existing eave point, but the fact that the setback, the wall edge is expanding past that eave point, my thought was they would also have the eave
right,
extend
right.
further into the setback as well. So those might be good questions to ask the applicant. But maybe as an alternative to our text we provided on the staff report, maybe in your motion as a condition to safeguard, you say, and the eave cannot extend to a point closer to the lot line than the existing eave. Maybe that's how you handle that instance.
Are we opening public comment, or?
Well, I would like to ask the applicant if he would like to explain his request.
Yes.
And please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mark Clemens. I'm here on behalf of the homeowners, Stacy Como and Anthony Mosession. My name is obviously Mark. My company is Michigan Home Renovations and Construction. We go by MRAC. My address is 68750 Hartway Road, Ray, Michigan. And I'm here today to if I could direct in your packet, you would have the certificate, a signed stamped land survey certificate. And to his point, I'd like to just carry on with what you already pointed out, and that is that the eave is already non-conforming. The property, unfortunately, back when this was built, which it's a one-story with no basement, it is modern, it's about 1,100 square feet, one bathroom, right? Very difficult in this day and age to get people to agree to one bathroom when considering the next owners, the person behind them. And so the practical difficulties that we're experiencing is there's been a death in the family. They need to bring more people into the home, which is why they're considering the renovation, and it's just simply too tight. We have doorways that are only 28-inch. There's some impractical things inside the house, but as for the amount of space and why we're seeking it, the amount that it might protrude, to his point, is exactly 1 inch. We're at 4'7" at the front of the building, We're at as per the certified stamped land survey certificate, we're at 4.4 at the rear of the building. And by the time we finish building the 16-foot addition that we're proposing, we end up encroaching only 1 more inch in terms of the base of the building. And that would be significantly the same thing as terms of the eave. To this point, we may end up encroaching as of the eave, the same unilaterally going straight back, because the property line is not straight. It sort of has a slight angle. So the further you go back in the property, the more it keeps coming and drifting over, which is how this created this 1 inch difference. Our intention is to beautify this beautiful, modern ranch. They love the architecture. They live there all their lives. They've been there since 1959. They grew up there. I talked to every neighbor, no problem at all. In fact, when you talk about drainage, the property to the north is higher than this property, right? So if we look at the land use, they're getting the brunt of the water, no matter what. And so what we're driving for really so the first point is, I'm going straight back. We're going to maintain the architecture both inside and outside. We're putting new roof, new siding. The shrubs, which are so overgrown because obviously before she passed away, she wasn't taking care of the property like it could have been taken care of. We're repairing the brick. We're keeping everything original. In fact, we're playing it up. So as part of our packet, we submitted, our plans for the addition, as well as some aerial photos of how this would lay out, right? Including on the land survey, how it would lay out. It meets all other criteria. And the peculiar thing about this property is it was built non-conforming from the very beginning. Back then, they didn't, as I've come to realize now, it wasn't that scientific. They knew, okay, you're closed, and that was it. Today, with the benefit of GPS and pegs and all that, yes, I can confirm to you the building has not moved since it was built, and it is sitting at 4'7", which to me was a lot of chagrin, and so to the homeowners, when we realized we were just mere inches from conforming in the first place. And the only reason why we're here is because it was non-conforming in the beginning. Right from the beginning, right from when it was built. So understanding that, we're not trying to build a 2-story monstrosity. We're trying to keep the really cool, diverse nature of the street. It's right across from the elementary school. There is no home like it. Nothing's like that and that was one of the reasons why I got hired to represent the family and also to do the project, is because I was the only one that came forward and said, let's play it up. Let's keep the architecture. Let's make it and restore it, and let's put something beautiful. And currently, as it stands right now, the home just won't satisfy the family's needs. They want to bring an elderly aunt who can't afford her home anymore. There's other variances. I realize, emotional things I could play and talk to you about, but there are other considerations besides just this. So, in terms of the impact, we feel it's very, very minimal, right? In terms of what it might do to anybody's consideration. We've met all the other requirements, and we're only taking 1 inch more than what already exists by going back 16 feet.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Just for the planner, was any consideration made for the permeability footprint ordinances that we were?
You mean like lot coverage for all impervious surfaces?
Yeah.
We looked at lot coverage, and there's enough, or this does not exceed the maximum lot coverage.
It's a big lot, it's like
law.
7,000 square feet,
Okay.
so.
So the maximum lot coverage, I believe, is 35%, I believe, it's 30 or 35% on a single-family home in this zone, and this does not exceed that.
Okay.
The fact that the addition is happening does not exceed that.
Okay. And then the plan for discharge water from the roof line, there's obviously a house directly next door. I'm guessing a gutter shoots towards now.
The gutters, as they stand right now, both to the property to the north and the south, they all bring to the front and drop. We're going to do the same.
Okay.
And bring it right to the front and drop it that way.
Okay.
I'm not going to put it in the backyard. That won't help.
I just had a question. I got a secondary letter from you earlier, and it says, it seems to me that this letter implies that this redo is going to be so they can sell the house. It says significant impact to retrieving a higher return and increased footprint would solve the implied saleability of the property. And now you're saying actually that's not the case, someone's moving in.
I'm saying there's more than one reason.
Okay.
They're not selling the house.
Okay,
They're
just curious.
They're
Just-
keeping the house, they're keeping it within the family. One of the homeowners lives, not far away, but on the western side of the state. Another homeowner lives in California. But they're making it a home by which the family can bring them together. There's an aunt that lives in Clawson that they're talking about moving into the house. Their mother died this last year.
And
She
you're,
was-
you're siding the,
Yeah.
you're not
I'm not.
doing brickwork in the back?
There
You're
is
siding
no
it?
brickwork in the back. It is gonna be, however, LP siding, right? So it'll have an appearance of hardy board look, right? Which will play up the architecture in the first place.
Because it is a beautiful mid-century modern, I know that
And
house
we're gonna
well.
keep that. I'm restoring all the glass, all of it's shot. So we're getting exact pieces made. So a beautiful new front door. The shrubbery is way over the top. We're gonna make that proportional again. Some of it is as big as that.
I know it's half the size of the front of
It's
the
half the size of
house.
the
I
front
know,
of the
I'm very
house.
familiar
Yeah.
with it.
So we're gonna scale everything back, make it much cleaner and neater, clean up the approach. And then as for the beautification of the property, with addressing drainage, with a new roof, with new siding, with new windows and doors, which all of that is getting replaced as part of my plan, it's going to be a property that will help the community. It'll present a positive image. The impact for allowing us to go back and infringe when it's already non-conforming in the beginning, I feel is minimal. I know it was in that in the beginning before we even touched it. And so unlike other homeowners, that maybe they built it conforming initially and then they're asking to try and vary from that, I can say there's a distinct difference in our situation. Because from the very beginning, it was non-conforming, which we now know scientifically, and I can prove it.
I don't know 30 years ago if we would have the technology to catch that inch, but
Truthfully, when I first measured it, it's 5 feet, but they built the fence. The fence is slightly on the far side of the property, so you have to go to the inside part of the fence. So when I initially submitted, I was like, shoot, we got it. It's 5 feet, no problem. But then, as we further supported our application and got a land survey, it became quite clear, no, I'm gonna have to seek a variance because it's never been conforming, ever. And that creates a special difficulty for this family because they want to keep the home. They don't want to sell the home. And I mentioned that point only to keep context that all of us are going at one point or another. Someone's going to want that house. And that is a beautiful home to be right across from the elementary. And very, very, very few people would like the idea of one bathroom, right? And that extra space is allowing us to put a second bathroom, in there.
Thank you.
Is there anyone, I would like to open the public discussion for this topic. Anybody in the audience like to address this topic? Doesn't appear that there's anyone in the public viewing section that wants to discuss, so I'll close the public section. Members of the board, do you have any additional questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I have nothing. I'm trying to find the motion so I can.
So I think just to remind you, to protect the eave safeguard, I would say, maybe you phrase it as, the eave will not extend close, the eave setback will not lessen from the already existing eave setback, or, something along those lines. Just to make sure that, they're not also gaining eave setbacks.
So to Ms. Perkins' point, I am going to keep it exactly the same. I'm going to go straight back.
Because you saw when I went like that.
Yes.
Yeah, so
It's nothing will be extended. I don't want to make it look goofy though, and have the strange angle at the back, which is why we went to the variance as opposed to, because inside it's really cool. We've got beams, it's conventionally built. It's all resting on a center beam. We're leaving exposed beams, so when you come into it, it's a ranch with no basement on a slab. We're just putting a slab back there and continuing it. And that's the space. So we gain with the 16 foot, the width is 26, so we gain whatever, close to 400, it makes it much more livable. 1,400, at least on one level, is perfect for many, many applications for people in the future.
And I guess kind of what I was saying is that if the eave is currently 2 feet from the lot line, then it cannot come, 1 foot 11 inches from the lot line now. It needs to stay at that
The
dimension.
eave should not extend the existing,
The existing eave setback.
Okay.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we approve the request for variance from section 3.1.b.4 to permit a smaller than required setback at 248 Red Ruth Avenue. Should I make that eve thing here? Or after I
You
read
could-
the?
You could say
With the-
with the following findings and then add with the following conditions, or I don't think there's
Yep.
really an order.
With the
Yep.
following findings, the practical difficulties are exceptional and peculiar to the property of the person requesting the variance and results from conditions which do not exist generally throughout the city. The practical difficulties which will result from a failure to grant the variance include substantially more than mere inconvenience or inability to attain a higher financial return. Allowing the non-use dimensional variance will result in substantial justice being done, considering the public benefits intended to be secured by this article, the individual hardships that will be suffered by a failure of the board to grant a variance, and the rights of others whose property would be affected by the allowance of the variance. The variance did not arise from the actions of the applicant or previous landowner. The requested variance is not based solely on financial need or circumstances. I would also like to add the caveat of that the eave on the new addition cannot extend farther than the current eave in the front of the building.
I just to remind everybody, by just geometry, I'm gonna end up 1 inch further into the lot just by following the line straight. I don't intend on doing anything other than following the exact lines that exist currently. But I'm just bringing that to everyone's attention.
And if that's the case, if he's following, so let's just say he's got a right angle. and
It's gonna be askew by an
It's gonna
inch,
be
are we
askew
still
by an
okay?
inch, but if it's in line with the home, I don't understand how that can,
So because
he can't like stop it and move it over. I mean, I guess he could.
I mean that's kind of what I was thinking.
But unfortunately, that would also make the building look odd. You know what I mean? When the practicality of an eave sticking 1 more inch and the gutter, I would still be at that point, if you look at a 5-inch gutter, putting on this, we're at 4'4",
Yeah.
right? I still would be right at that line, right at that moment.
My concern is that because the eve is a separate standard, and that because the variance request was not for that standard, it was for just the setback, then the ZBA is kind of acting to approve of, a second variance that was not part of the original request.
So he needs to come back with a
It would-
variance request for the
It would need to
eve?
be, either the non-conforming eve does not increase as your motion stated, or a separate request needs to be made for the eve.
So he would have to come back with an additional drawing to the,
Just it would be
administration
an
or-
additional case, because by state law, it needs to be publicly noticed.
right.
Does that make sense, Nick? Yeah. So,
So so I understand, your intention is to keep within the existing eave line.
I'm gonna follow the exact eve line.
So
I just can't, I'm trying to explain.
how will
But
that
his-
extend more than 8 2/3 from the proposed for?
Because the lot line isn't straight.
The
yeah,
lot
so
line.
the house comes into the lot line at
Right.
an angle.
So if this is the house, and I'm exaggerating, right, the lot line actually angles a bit. So the further back you come, which over the course of 16 feet was 1 inch, that it.
So you're telling me it's gonna be like 9
So
2/3?
I didn't know there'd have to be a separate request. So the idea was, I thought we were speaking specifically about the encroachment in the first place, which on the back, it would be relative because I'm keeping the architecture. I'm not changing the architecture. And it makes, from our perspective, it would make it odd, both, and create potential problems for the home if I'm now creating this weird jog, on the back.
So your suggestion is we approve this portion of it, and he comes back with a second request for the eave.
That, to my knowledge, that's the legal way to do it.
Can I,
And because of noticing, because all cases need public notices, and because the eve request was not part of the original request, it needs to be publicly noticed by the request. And otherwise, the ZBA can approve it, with kind of the safeguard that the eve comply with the ordinance.
But then he's stuck having to,
By an
Right.
inch, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's,
Well, is it possible for us to table this manner to add it, or does he have to go and pay another fee?
well, you could table it with,
If I had to pay another fee, I'd gladly pay another fee. That's not the point. The point is I'm trying to keep the architecture. That
Which
I'm
we
trying
want you to do.
restore.
right, exactly.
and I think
I think we're all speaking the same.
everyone thinks that architecture is
Yeah.
beautiful.
We're speaking the same language. We're
It
just trying to make it,
It's counterintuitive to try and change it.
we're just trying to make it correct legally. So is that your recommendation then?
I would say my recommendation would be to, and I'm not the board, the board needs to hear from the applicant, but, if the applicant is willing to trim it down an inch, the eave, not the wall setback, but the roof, angle the roof to a slightly different pitch, or cut the roof off an inch short of what is existing, then maybe it's a variance that's approved with the condition, as you were going to state. However, if that's something that's just absolutely impossible, maybe, the case could indeed be postponed as a whole. And nonetheless, notices would need to be sent out to state that second request.
And I would also bring forward, I'm trying to keep the architecture, one. Number two, no one came here tonight to object, right? I know you're talking about public, they were served public notice. They knew
Yeah.
that there was a variance being requested for the encroachment of this property.
Yep.
So I don't feel like we've met that threshold already. What's the practical matter is, 1 inch on a roof line, it will look odd, to everyone concerned if I do that.
Right, and I hear you, and I completely understand your frustration, and I think what we're saying is it's not a done deal. If you would like to, again, reapply for us to discuss the eve in the particular. So tonight we can approve this portion of
With the safeguard of the eve,
with the safeguard, which means if you didn't come back, you would have to make it 1 inch smaller.
Right, so.
Or you can apply again and come back
Here's a
with the-
better
with
question.
the eve.
It's gonna take me more than 4 weeks to build this and put this in place and all this type
Mm-hmm.
of stuff, provided I did get an approval, right? So if we proceed with the idea that, okay, if I need to, I'm making some strange jog to keep it from going any further than what the current eve sits at the rear or at the front. That needs to be defined. That would have to be the back of the property, right? Because we're at the back. That would be relative, not the front.
Right, because the property isn't even.
Because if it's on the front, now we're not talking 1 inch, now we're talking several inches.
Right.
Right? Because the front of the.
it's, we would measure it as the eave's closest point to the lot line as it currently
Which would be the
stands.
rear of the building, which
rear.
you've
Rear,
identified
right.
as 4'4". I would be glad to try and address that issue, but then it would allow me at least with an approval to proceed with this, because they actually embarked on this back in November, right? So any further delay would put us in a difficult spot.
So, yeah, that being said, you could approve with the condition, and if Mr.
Clemens.
Clemens wants to come back before the board as he starts building and realizes, he absolutely needs that inch
Yep.
to make it architecturally sound, and, he could come back and then request the E variance then.
It's entirely possible, and we're talking about such a small amount, right? It's entirely possible that actually when the framework goes up, as it happens, for whatever reasons, we aren't actually exceeding that inch on the overhang. It's
Yeah, maybe
conceivable
it's
to do so.
possible as it is built that it ends up complying with the.
Use a skinny wood?
Well, To his point, yes, I'm trying to I'm trying to be
You're
transparent.
gonna do the right thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
That's why I'm here.
you know, I feel like if we proceed with the existing variance, which is critical, right? That's an obvious need to proceed, and amend our motion to approve with the understanding that if it is determined during construction that that inch is exceeded for the overhang, which was not approved by this variance, that he has to come back.
Well, and I think Board Member Perkins' motion on the table, which is currently on the table, I just want to remind you that.
Yes.
Kind of covered that base that, with the condition that the eave overhang setback does not exceed the existing, I think.
The current build.
You are currently, you
At
do
the
have
rear,
that
if you
safeguarding.
want.
At the rear, if, yes.
Yeah, her current motion covers what's needed at this time.
Okay.
And to your, Mr. Hara, I think your statement would actually, I think, go a little bit, would be a little bit unnecessary per what it sounds like the contractor is looking to do.
Fair enough.
Okay, so then just to clarify the additional sixth point of review or approval for our findings of fact, we're using the eave should not extend more than the existing eave at the rear of the building, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so that's our motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, let's call the roll.
Mr. Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Erland,
Yes.
Ms. Perkins,
Yes.
Ms. Cindy Smith.
Yes,
Motion carries.
motion carries.
Thank you all.
Happy
Thank you.
constructing.
It's going to be beautiful. Come by and see it.
I want a tour.
Take care of it.
Yes, because
Thank you for preserving.
Yes.
we're preserving.
Yes.
So that's what's going to be the cool
Yes.
part, is when people come in, they're going to feel like they walked right into the 50s.
Nice.
That's how it's going to, even the bathroom tile, all of it.
Excellent.
So anyways, thank you
beautiful
all
house.
very much.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for bringing
Be
up
in
the
touch with
point.
Nick and we can all talk about as this progresses during construction.
Correct. And then in terms of the eve, I'm obviously aware and will do, if
You
it
can come
becomes
back, come back.
necessary, I'll come back before the board to say it's absolutely necessary, or due to construction, somehow that was solved. You know what I mean? So, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep. And I can get in contact with you then about our permit.
Absolutely.
Right. I thank you all. Have a good night.
You're welcome. Have a
night.
good evening. Awesome. Okay, let's have public discussion for items not on the agenda. Is there anything for items not on the agenda?
Not at this time.
All right. Does anyone in the public like to speak with something about that wasn't on the agenda?
Anyone on the phone?
Nope. Okay, let's close the public discussion. Any other business you'd like to bring us up to date with?
I do just have a brief staff report, if that's okay.
Sure.
So in the packet, you guys had a little one-page memo from myself, just with some potential training opportunities for all of you. I know Mr. Hara is currently signed up for the Citizen Planner course due to his engagement with the Planning Commission, but I do want to extend that opportunity to the three of you, and then, of course, the other two board members not here tonight. Is there any interest, I guess, and we'll leave that open-ended for you guys to get back to me if desired, to partake in the Michigan State Citizen Planner course, which is an online course regarding planning, zoning, and kind of just gets into basics of what a citizen planner is in your community. So if anyone is definitely interested right now, I would definitely take that, and we can get you signed up as soon as possible. But if you want to think about it a little bit more, we can always enroll you at a later time. And then the ordinance that you guys approved back in November, I did engage with that applicant, and you guys gave them an extra couple months due to the winter. And as the weather starts getting warmed up, he's engaged with the contractor, and they're hoping to be submitting some plans sometime in April.
The driveway on Rochester.
Yeah, 14
14
Mile.
Mile.
Yes.
Nice. So that we jumped ahead. And does anyone have anything else they'd like to discuss? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I would like to say, welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Just occurred to me as I looked over and there are two new faces. I mean,
Yes.
it's, you know,
Yes. Thank you.
pulling teeth to get people. It's-
Right.
We got
And you're also
two.
on the planning board? Are you on the planning board as well?
no, I'm not.
Well, welcome to the zoning board.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I think I'm filling big shoes with Mr. Sinaki, so I will do my best. Bear with me.
You did great. We all bumbled through tonight very well.
We did.
We
I
did.
didn't think it was very bumbly. I thought it was good. Nice job.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks.
All right. Can we have a motion to adjourn the
I
meeting?
move that we adjourn.
Second.
And roll call?
Ms. Perkins,
Yes.
Ms. Cindy Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Harrow,
Yes.
Mr. Erland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question. The other Smith is related to you?
No.
Okay, all right.
No, but we'll have to joke, because her daughter is a senior, and my daughter is a sophomore. And so I often see her at like soccer games and stuff, so we were at a meeting the other day, and I was like, this is the Smith corner. We were all saying,
You know.
No non-Smiths allowed.
good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job. Sure.
One of my card-
Yeah, no, he seems like he's a great contract.